Journeys.
Hey everyone, my name's Brett. Welcome to our second journey of the day. This is a different format than what we normally do. If you're new to the Hobby Collab, we normally do two people on a live stream, either playing a game or doing a hobby hangout. But the journeys format's a little different. We do a long form project, and it's sort of just one person hanging out with you guys in chat. Hey Polychrome, I see Polychrome in chat. Yes, there was a technical glitch earlier where the Manta this live stream got launched instead of the hobby hangout that we did earlier. But yeah, we have fixed the glitch, and we're back. So this is our third hobby show for the day. A little crazy. And yeah, we were supposed to start it at 12:30. That was the time we were scheduled to start at. Yeah, two people don't fit when there's a Manta. It's true. Part of the reason we were a little delayed is just getting everything sort of spatially arranged was a challenge. So yeah, let's kick this off. So I've been working on this model for the last 3 months. It has taken me 3 months to get it to this stage, which is assembled mostly. I'm actually not even all the way assembled, and primed. And I primed it this morning, and the primer, it still kind of smells a little bit. So I've got a fan off to my right, and there's a window open with another fan in it off to my left. And if you're the kind of person who doesn't like airbrushing streams, you should probably just go do something else for the next 2 hours. I'm going to be airbrushing a lot. I've got 3 bottles of the same color paint. I've got a siphon feed airbrush with a giant paint bottle. And I'm going to be trying to get some base coats down on this. I'm going to jump right into it. So my plan for today is to try to get some base coats down and maybe do a little bit of volumetric highlighting, maybe do a little bit of masking and some secondary colors. But the paint's going to need a while to dry after I put base coats down. I've got some slides I want to show, and I want to talk a little bit about the history of this model. But I want to do that once the paint is down and we're starting to dry a little bit. But just to give you a little bit of sense of scale, I can switch views here. So this is, there we go. So this is a top view. I've got the model on a Lazy Susan so that I can rotate it. And this is a Fire Warrior for scale. I also brought a banana for scale. I know that's a popular thing. So here's a banana. And yeah, it's this is a pretty big model. I've not got the back doors on yet. Those are the last bits of the assembly. Oh, and I forgot the engines. I can put those on later. So yeah, the the top comes off. We'll talk about this a little later too. How can I get this in the view? Top comes off. And this other top comes off. This bit is not primed. The interior is out of scope for this journey. But yeah, that will be maybe 2025 project is doing the interior of this. My goal for this project is to get the exterior painted and playable so that I can play a game with this at LVO, which is in 2.5 weeks. We'll see if that happens or not. That's a bit of an ask. I don't know if we're going to get there or not, but we're going to try. Yeah. Oh, and the last thing I want to do before I start painting is share just, again, another sort of scale thing. This is the Orca that we painted last year together in Journey. it looks giant. It is giant, but it's like, I don't know, a sixth, a seventh, 1/10 the size, like somewhere between a quarter and a tenth the size of the Manta. It's crazy. And yeah, when I play with this, people are like, "Oh, is that a Manta?" No, no, it's not. it's the Manta is a large model. So polychrome, the weight is listed as 12.5 kilograms, 28 pounds in freedom units. Yeah, so I've got 3 bottles of paint. One of them is a little bit used. I'm just going to mix them all together in this paint cup. So that the color gets sort of averaged. This is a thing I know Zach does a lot when he's army painting or diluting paints, is you do all the pre-mixing up front, so that way you're not getting sort of pot to pot variation, making your model look weird. I'm sort of doing this because I bought these paints a while ago and I've started using some of them. And I'm actually, I think weirdly, like used half of each of these pots. So I have 3 pots of like half used paint, which I don't know, was dumb. I don't know why I did that. I had one in the garage where I do airbrushing, one indoors where I do brush painting. And maybe the third one is unused. It sort of looks like that. Yeah, third one looks unused. Okay. So with two of these, I've got most of this container. And then I'll just pitch these. Okay. And this will be my backup. Thanks for joining, folks. Thanks for hanging out. I'm planning to go... Oh, shirt brush. Oh, you know what, Soups? Also, it might be the fans. We've got lots of fanage happening in the room at the moment. This is my... Oh, Zach gave me a backup Badger in case the Anthem goes south. Yeah, I think, unfortunately, just like... Normally when we airbrush in the studio, we don't have quite as much airflow. That's mostly because we're catching the overspray on like a table or something. Today, the plan is to just like paint off into the distance. And like the overspray is gonna get carried out the window. So it's more about just like volume of air moving. Yeah, I think, and I normally don't use, this is a new primer for me, but I like it because it's very close to the color gray that I want the model to be. So I'm not hopefully going to need to do multiple coats of this paint, but yeah, let's check it out. All right. This morning's been a bit crazy. Just trying to get everything over here to the studio. This primer I put on like 2 hours ago, and it was raining outside, so I was like taking my like freshly primed models that I primed in the garage covered, but then like trying to get them out to the car without getting them wet. All right, let's do a little test here. Cool. Okay, so you can see there that's like a different color gray. It's actually darker. All right, I'm gonna take these lids, these covers out. I think that will be better. Oh man, none of our airbrush holders work with this siphon feed airbrush. First world problems. Okay, and I'll take this out as well. Yeah, so I want to get some gray paint on here, and then while it's drying, we can take a break and talk about how this model came to be, how I came to own it, and how we got to this point in the what the build was like. I don't know, can you guys hear the compressor in the background? We're going to deal with that too. There's going to be fans and compressor noises. Oh wow, yeah. So this looked like very different gray on the camera. It's a slightly more subtle difference in person. But I always get a little, when I prime something gray and I'm ultimately painting it gray, I'm like, can I get away with just using the primer? Yeah. Don't worry, Barry. We'll get to orange paint in a little bit, which will be much more exciting than gray paint. All right. So yeah, we said this was 22 kilograms of resin, 22 and a half, 28 pounds, or sorry, 12 kilograms of resin, 28 pounds. In game, it holds 200 Tau Fire Warriors, Tau infantry models. And weirdly, that they, according to my reading of the rules, that means they could also hold Kroot. So there was a hot second where I was like, oh, maybe for LVO this year, if I can use the Manta as like a gaming piece, my like funny meme army could be 200 Kroot in a Manta. But I don't think the way the event organizer has structured the event, I don't think it's possible for me to both have a 2,000 point Manta at the narrative. I'm playing in the narrative, and like guys to put in it. He has ruled that it's a 2,000 point event. The Manta is 2,100 points, but he's ruled that models that are 2,100 points are legal for use in the event. So that means that as your like full and complete army. So like that's specifically to allow people with big stupid models like this, or the Reaver Titan is another one that GW has made 2,100 points specifically so that it's not legal in standard 2,000 point games, or if you're a conspiracy theorist, so that people like Richard Siegler, who when they win the world championships, are not able to select said model as their prize. Am I already out of paint? It's like either clogged or I'm out of paint. I'm already out of paint. Oh my God, this is a disaster, guys. I brought 3 bottles of paint and I've already gone through 2 of them. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna, okay. Maybe I diluted this last bottle a little bit. I mean, I'm putting it on thick. Yeah, I bought this paint like a year ago when I was like, oh, maybe I'll get around to painting this model in 2023. It'll be my winter 2023 project. That didn't happen. So it's been hanging out for a while. All right, good thing this is like a full new bottle of paint, so more than the other bottles. But I'm going to add some water. Even though this is air paint, I'm going to add a fair bit of water. Thanks, Rudy, for the donated memberships. Closer to 6 bottles. Yeah, I know, right? I did not expect that. It's Vallejo paint too, so I don't know. I'd heard their strike ended, but did it interrupt shipments? I should have stocked up. All right. Lazy Susan coming in clutch. Yeah, so I was saying before, 200 infantry models. I was thinking to fill it with Kroot, but you can't. Yeah, you can't bring. In the LVO narrative, there's not enough points available. It's a 2,000 point event, or a 1,000 point event for most of it, and then the sort of quote unquote big game on the last day is 2,000. So I can't really do that. But in theory, I could bring it on the final day as my full and complete army if I wanted to. I just have to decide if I want to do that. If I don't end up doing that, this will just be my sort of display. It'll hang out with the army. It'll be like a display piece. So that's my backup plan. What else? Oh, you know what? This water I added is kind of changing the look of the paint. I'm not a fan. Can you guys see it? Like this color looks different than that color. Maybe I didn't shake it well enough and it's separating. I'm going to use the vortex mixer. Little ASMR for you. No, it's not primer. This is actual paint. Eternal Crusader. Yeah. Thanks, Rudy. Donation for another bottle. Yeah. I had been stocking up. Like I said, I'd been sort of anticipating this day for a while and stocking up. And then over time, I was just gradually using it. And so when I was like, a week ago, I was like, I should check my stock to make sure I have enough for, in anticipation of this stream. And then just life got busy. Okay, that's a little better. All right, let's let that dry for a bit. I'm going to clean out the airbrush and then we can look at some pictures. Cleaning out the siphon feed airbrush is also like kind of annoying because you don't have like a cup that you can spray out. You can't like wipe out a cup with a Q-tip. You kind of just spray water into the siphon feed opening and hope for the best. You can clean out the needle in the same kind of way that you can a normal gravity feed airbrush, but yeah. I was telling the guys, I was like, this is the Anthem, the siphon feed version of the Badger is like, oh, I just sat on the lid. It's like objectively worse than the Badger for like 99% of the tasks you do with an airbrush, except for this one task where it's like, I'm just painting a giant thing. I'm going to be airbrushing the same color for 3 bottles of paint. Okay. Cool. So let's let this dry for a little bit. And I want to go through, oh, you know what? Yeah, that's fine. I haven't done the bottom yet either. I want to go through some pictures. So let me find the mouse. All right, so yeah, story time. Okay, so this was me and my dog, who she's not with us anymore. In circa, this was like late 2020. And I need to get this thing out of my way so I can sit in the field of view. So this is the day it arrived. So I bought this on eBay. This is a secondhand purchase. And it just arrived in this big tub. The previous owner had told me that he had gone back and forth with Forge World to get all the really bad warped parts replaced, but otherwise had not done any prep or assembly. So it arrived in this tub. This tub was in a box. He had the seller, the eBay seller, had taken the tub to UPS, and UPS offers packing services. So he took the tub to UPS and he said, hey, I want to send, this thing is fragile, I want to send it, can you box it up for me? And they normally do that, but you're meant to like give them the individual items. If you give them a bunch of items in a box, they will do this. They will take the box, because they're not going to like open your whatever you're sending, they're not going to like open it up. They'll just take the things that you give them and wrap them. And so because he gave them a box, they put the box in another box with some bubble wrap and mailed it to me. So yeah, this was me opening it up for the first time. Okay. So the parts were pretty, in theory, he had replaced some of the badly cast parts, but yeah, they were pretty rough when they arrived. These ones aren't too bad. You can see they're on the left. That one's pretty warped. Wow, these things are not straight at all. Also not straight. These are supposed to be straight, by the way. But like, I'd built the Orca already at this point. Hadn't painted it, but I'd built it. And so I knew kind of what I was getting myself into. I knew most of this stuff could be fixed with a heat gun or in hot water. Yeah, I know, right, Soups? Like, how bad were those? Some of these might have happened in transit. So for example, here's some breakage. The ion cannons, these little bobs broke off. That's fine. I can glue that back on. Burst cannons, both warped and broken. I don't know how I'm gonna fix those. All right, this is build pics now. All right, so these are, yeah, so this is like kind of what things look like when it arrived. And yeah, like I said, I was bummed, but like, I kind of knew what I was getting into with this model. Like, I didn't buy it expecting it to be like, I think a lot of people get their first Forge World kit and they're like, oh, this is crazy how like like all this stuff is broken and warped and stuff. I was not like, I did not have that reaction. I was like, oh, this is a little worse than I expected, but like, I can work with this. Yeah. So then it's sad. Like the guy who sold it to me, he told me his story was that he had bought it. He had done this exchange with Forge World to replace the badly cast parts, and then it had just kind of sat in his closet for 3 or 4 years, and he never did anything with it. So now he was selling it. He didn't see that he would have time. He had a kid, had other hobbies, and it was just time for it to go to someone else. So I kind of did the same thing. I sat. It sat in my closet for a couple years. But at the time, this was like late 2000, was like the time when Forge World did their first like big culling of their web store. And I was like, oh crap. If I ever want to own this model, by the time I'd sort of always expected it would just be available for sale. And so like if and when I had the financial means to jump in, I would be able to buy it. But when I saw that, when Forge World started like going through and just chopping stuff out of their web store and doing the significant downsizing, I was like, all right, I had assumed that this would always be available, and it might not. So I kind of decided I needed to make this purchase, but like I might not be able to get around to buying it or building it for a little while. So yeah, I did some work on it early, just like doing some cleanup, doing some removal of like the big chunky sprue things. I actually also weirdly have this like this habit of saving all the big chunky sprue things. So I have this bag of like all the plastic, like the resin offcuts. I don't know why I saved that stuff. So I removed all that stuff. The one side that's facing the fan is much drier so I'm going to flip it around. Yeah, I think the first coat I did was too heavy. I need to do lighter coats. Okay, so yeah, so I did a little bit of work on it, and then was like, I'm not going to build this now. I got other priorities going on. So I put it away for a while. And then, yeah, I decided in October, late September, early October, that this was going to be my year for doing this winter project. And I started building in early October, and it's been 3 months of like, this has been my primary hobby for the last 3 months, October, November, December, is just building this thing, and it has been a lot. I'll go through some more photos here. So here is some shots of the build process. So if you're in our Discord, I started a thread in the Hobby Whip channel. There's a link to the Discord in the video description. And in that thread, I've been chronicling all of these photos. But here's a video of one of the engines that came, and I think this was some shipping damage. So you can see there's this big sort of crease in this one spot here. And I think what that was is it was sitting in that box and shipping, or maybe even just in my closet after it arrived to me. And it was sitting in storage with like a 5-pound chunk of material to it. And just that weight of this sharp edge of some other part of the model digging into that thing caused that big crease. And so what I found is that I can just use this heat gun to reshape some of the material. You don't even need to. You don't even. What's that?
Oh, it had sound playing.
Oh yeah. Oh okay.
We forgot to do that. Sorry.
And yeah, you don't even need to bend it back. You can just like heat it up, and it sort of pops back into its own shape. Here is another sort of mid-build process video of like after I'd gotten. Oh, this is a little. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But this is my first time like sort of actuating the tank bay. Very cool. Let me go back to the slideshow. Okay. So we saw all these damaged parts photos. But then I started doing some of the glue up. So these are fun. I used almost exclusively JB Weld. I used a little bit of super glue. But Rudy was our JB Weld sponsor for this project. He donated the JB Weld. But it's one of these, look at it, they sell it in these giant tubes. These tubes are 5 ounces each, 142 grams. So like 10 ounces of JB Weld is like the giant tube. And I'm almost through these 2 tubes. The whole thing is glued together with JB Weld. There's a ton of pins in it as well. You'll see some of those. But basically my strategy was like, and part of the challenge with this build is the glue takes so long to dry. Like it takes 3/4 of a day to cure. So, so you have to like glue something up, clamp it, and then go to bed or like go to work. You can't like keep working on stuff. You just sort of do it in these bite-sized chunks over a long period of time. And so some days you'd like do a really big glue up and it would be impressive and cool. And you'd feel awesome at the end of it because you're like, I made a big progress. And other days you'd like glue one little tiny part onto another thing. But you'd have to stop because like the glue takes a day to dry. I use lots of big clamps, lots of wood blocks. I learned one of the most critical things in this build is the parallel, you can't see this, but like where my mouse cursor is, but like these sort of 2 bits that sort of run back from this fuselage and form this U shape. Those 2 U-shaped bits, those 2 like bits that go back, need to be as parallel with each other as possible. And I did not control for that as I was building this. I didn't realize that was critical until later in the build. And this is one of the problems with a build this big is you can't test fit everything all at once. You can't test fit how things go together until it's already half together and it's too late. So I tried as much as I could to do dry fits and test fits, but you end up kind of having to adapt on the fly. So after I'd kind of done the heat gunning that we saw earlier, and that made a giant noise. I apologize for that. I was able to get the engines glued together, so these central pieces are glued in. Then, oh, this is a fun picture. This front section of the fuselage is just a giant chunk of resin. It's not hollowed out. It's not used for anything. It's just literally like a solid brick. And I was like, I realized that, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is like an opportunity for me to make this thing lighter. Then I'll have the lightest Manta ever built. And I drilled all these holes, thinking that I was doing this cool thing by making it lighter. I later talked to a friend of mine who's built several of these. He's a commission painter who specializes in Tau, and so he gets a lot of folks coming to him to paint their Mantas. He's probably built like 4 of these by now. I showed him this picture and he about had a heart attack. He was convinced that I was destroying my model. It was going to fall apart. is not going to hold together. So I'm crossing my fingers that that doesn't actually happen. But this was, yeah, that was a fun day. I did some more drilling of holes in the top of the fuselage. I also used an upright mill. I have a friend who has a workshop, and there were some parts that were not even, and I wanted them to sit down evenly, and so I did a bunch of shimming and got it sort of flat, and then took it to his place and milled it. So yeah, there's like a lot of big tools that I ended up using during the assembly of this. This was one of the few, so I mentioned that there were, the previous owner had corrected a bunch of the casting defects. So like, I don't consider the warpage and stuff, or the broken parts like casting defects. This is what I would consider to be like a casting defect. So like there's this, I don't know what you call it, but there's like, it's disjoint. So the two halves of the mold come together and they don't meet up evenly. They like exist kind of off plane from each other. And so you get these like this texture is on one plane, and then there's this discontinuity, and then it just kind of resumes on this other plane. And sometimes it can be not obvious whether you like are meant to sand down the high spot or fill in the low spot. And on flat surfaces, you can kind of do either. In this case, it's a textured surface, and so it was tricky. But I decided I was going to fill in the low spot, and I used some milliput, and then had to recarve the texture with a little needle file. That was a fun project. Oh man. All right. So this was another pretty big deviation so I drilled the holes. That was my first like deviation from the normal instructions. But then the GW instructions want you to assemble here. I'll show the actual model here. Okay, here we go. So this, can I do this? There we go. Okay. So this section right here, it's like a double cockpit basically. There's a front cockpit up here, and then there's like a back cockpit. And the front cockpit is fine. You can access that all day long. But this back cockpit, if you build the model sort of the standard way, you can see into it. There's a little cover that goes over it that is removable, but you can't actually like get a paintbrush in there. It's like inaccessible enough that you can't like paint that section of the interior after the model's built. So GW specifically tells you like, hey, you're not going to be able to access this. Build and paint the like guys that go in this back cockpit section before you go any further in the model assembly. And I thought that was dumb. So what I did was I basically, so this is the cover. So you can see like there's just this narrow slit. You can see just to the left of the saw here that you have to look down into that space. And I decided to remove the sides of this, that obscure access to this area. Cut it off, and then you can see here some more pictures. I'm using one of these like oscillating tools. This tool, by the way, that you see here, it's got a sanding attachment as well as some different sort of plunge cutting attachments. Was like the single most useful tool that I used in this build. I used this at just about every step, and it was such a time saver. Yeah, so here you can see I've like made slits kind of all around it. It's about to come out. I've glued the cover that's supposed to be removable down onto it to hold those two pieces together at the right gap, and then I've pinned it with the cover of the front section. And then now it's glued together. And so now, instead of this being like a front cover and a rear cover of the cockpit, where the rear cover is so small that you can't actually like paint the models inside, now the whole like thing is removable as a monolith, and you have very easy access to the inside of that for painting and installing the guys later. So that's this thing. Right? Maybe you saw it earlier. So this is like one of my modifications to this the standard GW assembly instructions. So I like this a lot. I think I probably could have done it a little bit more elegantly, but fundamentally, I think I'm happy with how it came out. And I think it'll make for cooler. You'll be able to see the inside better as well. And also the cover, the cockpit pieces aren't going to be as fiddly. Like if you did it the standard way, it would be this front section and then this back lid, and they'd be separate pieces and they would potentially fall off. But this is like a big chunk of material. It's heavy. It's not going to go anywhere if you're transporting it or something. Anyway, I'm super happy with this decision or this idea and kind of how it came out. I've got a little bit more work to make it a little bit more elegant, but I'm generally happy with how it came out. And then, yeah, here we are with sort of starting. Up to this point, I've been just gluing individual pieces together into sub-assemblies. You can see here, I broke one of these. If you look at the cupola on the top right that hold the drone burst cannons, I've broken one of those little prongs. You'll see this is a theme. The other one gets broken at some point. I tried gluing them back on, and they just broke again. So I just left them off at some point until the very end of the build because they kept getting bumped. And they're pretty fragile. But at this point, I'm gluing sub-assemblies together. The thing's getting bigger and bigger. The glue-ups and the clamps are getting bigger. Here we are gluing the back of the fuselage on. This back section is the only bit that holds, like this back, I realize this back section is a little structurally weak as well. And so I ended up, actually, maybe if I go back, you'll be able to see it. No, okay. I ended up adding a steel bar down across the bottom. You can't really see it in this picture because I haven't added it in this picture. I don't know that I have a good shot of that. Anyway, moving on. Another big change, or another big sort of rework that I had to do. If you look at this picture, you can see this gap. This is it's upside down here. The tank bay doesn't sit down quite enough, and so you have this big gap between the tank bay and the fuselage. And the perspective's a little weird here, so it's hard to tell if that gap is in the depth direction or in the height direction. It's actually a little bit of both. And so I ended up having, this is my only real like disassembly, or like undid some work that I had done in order to, and redid it in order to make this join more tight. So here you can see after that rework, it's a lot better. This is another, I was like really on the fence about whether to like cut apart the model that I glued together already, the bits that I glued together. But I decided to, and it was, I think, the right choice. It looks a lot better. 2 copies of these. So here's the join that I had to cut apart. Here's me cutting it apart with the saw, the same saw that was super useful. Here's what it looked like after it was cut apart. And then I glued it back together, which I didn't show. Here's the wings going on. So this is exciting. The wings going on really kind of brings the whole thing together. It goes from being a bunch of small bits to like just a big, massive block. There's actually a surprisingly little amount of surface area that holds the wings on. So I put two 3mm steel rods in the wings, in each wing. Here it is gooped up with JB Weld. And then here it is after it dried. So you can see there's a little bit of a gap there. I ended up filling these gaps. I realized after the fact that I think GW means these gaps to be panel lines, part of the panel lining. And so I think I did myself a little bit of a disservice by filling, completely filling and sanding smooth these gaps. So I don't know, I might at some point go back and rescribe some panel lines along where those joints are with a panel line scribe. We'll see. And then here it is with the second wing on. Also pretty cool. And then here I'm starting to fit like the top hatch on. I got the engines on. The top hatch needed a lot of sanding to get to fit. I had spent a lot of time sort of sanding and fitting the different parts to make all of the joins as snug as possible. I talked a bunch about like work I did to try to make the gaps as small as possible and everything fit together as tightly as possible. And I not sure that, and that if that ended up being like a good thing. And it's weird for me to say that, but like I ended up making a lot of steps in the process harder on myself because everything fits so tightly together. I think this model is meant to be kind of loosey-goosey in how it goes together. And if everything is loose, then you can just glue it all together, and you just, if you're okay with a little bit, you know, some panel gaps here that you fill, or some big gaps that you fill, then you can save yourself. But I ended up not doing that. I wanted everything to fit together tight, which meant that literally every part that went on here had to be sanded to fit. There was no parts that just like went on without any sanding. It was rough. Here's more holes that I drilled in the engines before gluing those. You can see I also put pins when attaching the engines. I had this realization just before I was gluing this together that these engines are actually a big part of what helps the wings stay on. They're like important structurally. So I used a lot of glue. I put these pins in to try to sort of strengthen that connection. Because yeah, I felt like the engines were an important structural element. And here's the engines getting clamped in place, glued down. Lots of clamps. Oh, welcome, Chicken. Yeah, Chicken is my partner at LVO. So he's also getting ready for the narrative event. This is the feet getting put on, these little feet pads. I use this benchtop grinder a lot as a weight. I don't use it as a grinder very often, but I do use it as a big, heavy chunk of steel to weigh things down. Here's the top hatch after I did a bunch of sanding, and it now fits down in place, which is exciting. The model is basically glued at this point. I'm just like fitting these accessories on. Oh yeah, and then the last thing I did is wash it. Oh, you can see the steel bar that I put in here in the back. You can see that steel bar across the back between those two halves. That is a 1/4 inch, like a 6mm steel rod. Also not sure that was necessary or did me any favors. It turns out there's a lot going on in that area. There's a ramp that like goes in and out. To install the tank bay, the parts have to slide through there. So I started with a 6mm rod, and by the time I had like ground away enough material so that all of these things that need to slide in and out could get past it, I think I had like 2.5mm of material left. It ended up not, ended up having to remove most of it. But I washed it after I assembled it. And I don't, again, my theory was that like, oh, this will be faster and easier than washing all of the parts individually. I don't know if that saved me any time either. It was kind of a hassle either way to wash this. I used LA's Totally Awesome because it's listed as a degreaser. I've never used LA's Totally Awesome as a something to wash resin models with before. It's kind of an experiment. I don't know. It seems like the paint's sticking. We'll find out, I guess. I also washed it with dish soap after this. I did 2 washes. I scrubbed it with like a bathroom scrub brush. It's weird. Like we have all these tools that are like small for miniature painting, and I didn't use any of them for the assembly. Like I used a pin vise once to like do small pinning, but like I didn't use small files. I didn't use hobby knives. I was using like woodworking tools, woodworking chisels. I used a table saw. I used a upright mill. I was using woodworking clamps. Yeah, no, Polly, that's a great point. It would have just gotten dirty again. Oh, here we are gluing both of the broken couple of bits back on. After I ended up pinning these after we were done with the build. The last thing I did was glue these little broken couple bits back in place. There's a close-up of it. And that's it. That's my build log. We're doing the painting here today, or at least we're getting started on it. But yeah, I wanted to share some of that journey. The paint, so let's see, let me switch. I'm going to zoom this out a little bit. Okay, maybe turn it. Okay, so there's still some wet bits of paint on here. But I'm going to go ahead and work on the cover. I've got to do a coat of paint on the cover, and I've got to do a coat of paint on the 2 covers, really. I see some new folks in chat. Hey, Graham. Hey, Chris. Hey, Zell Nasty. Yeah, thanks for joining. Yeah, car body shop. You know what I was thinking? I used Milliput mostly for filling gaps on the model, or if there were like, because the wings are meant to sort of be smooth and flat, but the resin kind of does this in some places, and so I tried to fill. And you can't just sand off the high spots because there's panel lines. If you just sand off the high spots, you get burned through the panel lines. So I was like, oh, let me try to do some combination. I can sand off the high spots a little bit. I'll just reduce the depth of the panel lines by doing that. But I won't go all the way down, so I'll still have some panel lining, and then I'll fill in the low spots with and I use Milliput. And I think, to your point, Polly, about body shop, I think Bondo would have been a better product. I think just auto body, this is basically an auto body. If you use auto body tools, you're probably okay. All right. We're painting gray things gray. It's a slightly different gray. Okay. Yeah, I think I screwed myself a little bit by diluting this paint. I am wishing I had not. I'm not sure I would have had enough volume of paint if I hadn't. But yeah, it's not covering well. The air paint has already got, you know, kind of right on the edge of how much pigment it has compared to its solvent. All right, let me do this other cover. Chicken, I'm curious if you're still there. Are you thinking of doing an Orca? I know you had. Oh no, you bought one, right? You found a recast. I was like, at one point you were talking about printing one. I was wondering if that had happened or started. That's probably not going to happen for LVO, I'm guessing. Oh no, I got to run. It's a little too close with the airbrush. Graham, this gray is a, so I got this gray primer, and the paint that I'm applying is like a slightly darker, slightly warmer gray, if that makes sense. But I'm actually like quite surprised / impressed at how close the gray is of the primer to the paint that I'm using. But yeah, I'm running out, and I don't have enough, which is three bottles was apparently a massive underestimation of how much paint I need. Yeah, like I'm probably just got like a 1/4 inch, 4 or 5 millimeters of paint left in this canister. And the stuff that's coming out is like drying streaky because you can it's sort of hard to see because of the glare. But it's not drying nicely. Oh yeah, there's a really bad spot like right there. You can see that. Yeah. Yeah, it looks pretty shiny. It's not gonna be that way. Yeah, we'll get some matte varnish on it. Man, and then I do that. Look at that. Giant blob of goop. Okay. All right, that is all I can do with the paint that I have. Unfortunately. I can do some masking, and I can do some stripes. So that's another thing we can do. And so maybe I'll play around with that a little bit, and then we'll call it there once we're done with that masking stuff. So just as a reminder, my paint scheme for my airplanes, I had the Orca earlier as a size comparison. And I'm going to grab it again just to show off the striping. Let me make a little space. Okay. So, yeah, the Orca, it's got this this orange striping, and so there's basically three primary colors on my airplanes. There's this dark gray, there's this light gray that's, you know, in a couple areas, and then the orange accent color that gets added as a stripe. And in this case, I did a panel as orange as well. So I'm sort of imagining, I'll set this down. I don't have a full plan for this yet. But my thought is, let me zoom out a little more. Okay, my thought is sort of to, if I do this, okay. My thought is to have a stripe similar to the Orca, kind of like a stripe along one wing. I don't know, like, it looks like I've been doing the left wing. So some kind of stripe along here, and it probably goes over the engine. There's some antennas that go at the back here, so maybe it sort of like goes between the antennas. So yeah, some kind of striping on the left side, eccentric, so it's like it's not on both sides, just on one side. And then I have to figure out where I'm going to do the light gray panels. So on the Orca, you know, you saw the engine inlets had it. There was that big center disc that had the light gray. So it'll be something sort of like that. I'll pick a few panels, and they'll end up that light gray color. And so, yeah, I'm thinking out loud here. I'm not like firmed up a solid plan for this yet. So if you have any thoughts, let me know. But I guess I'm sort of thinking, you know, I think the engine inlets here probably want to be light gray. And I'm sort of thinking these blocks here at the back want to be light gray. This thing in the center is sort of like a tail. It sort of visually fills that same, and actually the panel lining sort of is the same as Tau aircraft tails. It's just a lot shorter and wider. So if I treat it like a tail, I didn't do any light gray panels on the Orca tail. So maybe I was going to say maybe I do that, but I didn't actually. I think there's probably some light gray that happens on this symbol here. Oh, and then there's the other cover. This is still wet, so I'm not going to put this in its spot yet. But there's all these panels here that I can do in the same way I did on the Orca. I can do one or two of these in orange as an accent. And then, you know, again, just kind of like sort of riffing on the scheme that color scheme that I developed for the Orca. These little dots here, I'm thinking I painted those just black and then used decals for like caution text kind of around them. And there's a bunch of those all over the model. So I think I'm just going to paint these black. And they'll be like fuel caps or something like that. Freehand important scenes from Sep's history. I kind of like that, Polly. I'm not a freehander at all, so that is completely outside of my comfort zone. But I wish that I was that talented. I've seen some like galaxy mantas, or you know, people who have done some kind of crazy paint schemes with them. All right, so I think maybe what I'll start with, because the striping, I want to think on that a little bit more, but I think what I'm going to start with is the masking for the light gray on some of these engine nacelles. So, because I know I definitely want these to be light gray. So unfortunately, adding water to the paint also is now making it take way longer to dry. So I feel unsure about putting masking tape on here. All right. I think this side is pretty, this side is probably dry enough. Okay. Oh, you know what? Actually, I want to show you guys one other thing. I brought all these other bags. So there's like a ton of other parts here that go in this thing that I haven't even installed yet. But this bag has a couple of these, there's these doors here. I'm going to take this off. Okay, so these doors, they go in they're handed. They go in a certain way. So there's a 50-50 chance I'm putting the wrong one in here. Yeah, I don't think that's it. Yeah, there we go. Okay. I think this is the right way. Again, my goal for LVO is just to get this, like I don't care about the interior at all. I'm not going to do any interior stuff. I just need the outside to look painted, or to be painted. And so some of this stuff that like, anytime, just in the interest of time, anytime I came across a bit that like wasn't required or you couldn't see from the outside, I was like, cool, not doing that. All right, and so then this is this ramp. So there's like two decks to the Manta. There's a lower deck and an upper deck. And the upper deck has all the fire warriors, and the lower deck has the vehicles. And then there's this ramp for the people on the upper deck to get down. So what you do is does it help if there we go. This is actually a great view. So there's this little door. Oh, so these start by being closed. If they're closed, they're like this. Oh, I just scraped off some paint. Oy vey. All right, then this opens. Yeah, look at that. I have to do some work on trimming the bottom of this. These doors open, slot back in. This guy opens, and then this ramp comes out. And that's how the fire warriors like get from the upper deck down to the ground. Anyway, there's all these like moving bits and interior stuff that I just haven't gotten to yet. Oh, and we were talking about the engines earlier, which I also don't have installed right now, but these go on. And I didn't prime these, unfortunately. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, these are for another time. I'm going to do these later. Okay, so I think my plan for the rest of today is to mask and try to paint this engine nacelle here. I think the paint around this is dry enough, so we'll give that a go. Oh, I like that idea, Bryce. Having the TAL logo in the middle of the stripe. Okay. So I'm just trying to I'm going to try to not push the tape down super hard. Okay. Here, let me get a knife. I can cut the tape with a knife. I know there's a knife somewhere. It's like a whole drawer of knives, I'm sure. Aha, found it. Okay, so I'm just going to use a knife. Try to fit this. Okay. Oof. No, didn't quite work the way I wanted it to. Well, at least I know that I'm not pulling up the paint when when I'm taking up the tape. Not super, I guess I'm, in hindsight, I'm not super concerned about overspray onto these nacelles because I'm going to paint them anyway. So maybe, or I guess, I don't want to get it on the wings, but like, I don't super worry if I get paint like into the engine inlets because I'm going to repaint those anyway. Those are going to get made some kind of really dark blue. That's what I did on the Orca, and I thought that looked good. So I'm not going to stress too much about overspray there. But I do want to mask off the wings. To be careful I'm doing this, that I'm not pressing or putting too much of my weight on the wing. Like if I set my arms down on it, because it's just sitting on this lazy Susan. It's somewhat precariously balanced. It's also on a giant block of wood, so it's like, I don't know, 8 inches off the table, just to get it high enough so that the camera can pick it up. All right. Okay. Looks good. Do this in a different way so I'm not blocking the view. Okay, that. Okay. One of the other things, actually, I had thought of this as a conversation topic and then completely forgot about it once the stream started. So maybe I'll start it now. But I have a question for you guys. So, I'm watching. I just turned my head and read chat, caught up on chat. That's what my chuckle was. All right, so this is kind of a big centerpiece model. I know I was talking with Vino last night about a friend of his who has a big Titan collection. And he was telling me that he does the LEDs, sound effects thing on his Titans. And I sort of had a minute where I was like, this is I'm never gonna have, this is the coolest model I'm ever gonna own. Should I do something like that with this model? Should I I could instead of painting the interior, I could fill it with electronics and a battery and a smoke machine and some lights and whatever. There's a bunch of cool things one could do with a model like this if one was so inclined. And I thought about it and I was like, I don't know that what would I do that doesn't sort of feel derivative or samey, I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you see something you like it's cool and you want it, just do it for yourself. I'm a little bit of a hipster in that way. I sort of feel like if I were to do something like that, I'd want it to be different in some special way. But also in addition to that, I don't know, I felt thinking about that didn't bring me joy. It didn't inspire joy in me. I wasn't oh, that would make my enjoyment of this model even more if it like lit up or something like that. And in fact, after thinking about it some more, I was afraid that like if I did do something like that it almost would like detract from the model, I guess. Like instead of being this like cool centerpiece model that I could be proud of, like having built it in this 3-month build process and all the paintwork I'm going to do and yada, yada, yada. It's just going to be like, oh, that's like a model with some lights on it. Like I feel like it would get reduced to like the weird gimmick that I had chosen to implement. If that's I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but I just generally was like, I decided I wasn't keen on the idea. Anyway, not taking anything away from people who have done that. Like, that's awesome. I think it's a super cool project. Obviously, I put lights and lots of other things. I just wasn't like, I didn't feel like this was the kind of thing I wanted, or the Orca even, for that matter, like same kind of thing. Anyway, I'm curious, for you guys in chat, have any of you done a big model like this and done something like that, done some like modification to it that, you know, some electronics project, or like did some cool thing, water effects, I don't know, I'm thinking outside the box here, weird hobby, I don't know, gimmick for the lack of a better word, that ended up being cool, that you were like, oh, that came out awesome, I was super happy with it once it was done, or that when it was done you were like, didn't love that, wish I hadn't done it, like I kind of wish I'd just like spent that time or energy or money or headspace on like a slightly better paint job, or I don't know what else. Like, anyway, that was my conversation topic that I wanted to bring up. What do you guys think about that? Or like the other thing that we could talk about is if you think that I'm completely wrong and it would be amazing to like have this thing light up or do some weird trick. Like I know a guy who, there's an ethereal that sits in the deck here, and he 3D printed the ethereal in the chair out of clear resin and made him look like a hologram. I thought that was cool. That was like a neat, but it's not like overpowering. It's not like, oh, that's like what you did with your model. It's just like a small little neat touch. Yeah. All right, so now I'm going to look at chat. No sound effects. Dim red or green interior lighting. Yeah. Soups, definitely not taking my question seriously. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Hologram effect? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop reading chat and go back to, I think I'm ready to paint this this one spot here. So the paint that I use for this light gray is called Blue Gray Pale. Vallejo model color, Blue Gray Pale. It's not pale gray blue, which is a different color that Vallejo also makes. It's not gray pale blue. They have like 3 different colors that are some iteration on, or some combination of blue, gray, and pale. And yeah, I've definitely bought the wrong one at a point. But this color I use is called Blue Gray Pale. I just started using the numbers because, yeah. Otherwise, it's gonna happen. Okay. I'm going to mix the paint in the cup, which I know is a no-no. Yeah, I like that polychrome chicken. I like that idea of making it look so not like a weird electronics project, but like a little mini diorama inside to make it look lived in, or something like that. I like that idea a lot. Tell a little story. All right, I'm just mixing water. This is not an air paint. So I'm just adding a little water. Stirring it with the back end of a paintbrush, because I'm a savage. Okay. All right, I need to remind myself not to move my trigger hand too much, so I don't slosh paint out and spill it all over the wing. Now this is the other thing that happens. When you're working with tools that have cords, the cords get stuck in they do this. They do this. And then that's how you break the cupolas. All right, I think that's it. I think we did it. Okay, let's see, what time is it? 2 o'clock. I think because that didn't take very long, I think I'm going to mask the other one and do the other one. Wasn't sure how long that would take, but that was pretty quick. And by now, the other one has dried. The paint on the other side is dried. Zach, thank you for the spare badger. I'm using it right now. Okay, so then let's do the other side. I did some sanding earlier before the show, and I forgot how much I hate sanding paint. Like acrylic paint does not sand well. It just like smudges. It's like too soft and plasticky. I want it to sand. If there's like a bump or something, I want to be able to sand smooth and put a second coat over it. But I just end up like smooshing it around. It doesn't come off. No, the primer is just rattle can primer. But it's interesting to hear that, Chicken. I had not understood that to be the case. Yeah, for resin models, I just do rattle can primer because I don't know, in my head that it sticks better than than acrylic primer or airbrush primer. I don't know if that's a real thing or not. Yeah, so I guess I'm wondering if there are people in chat who play Tau. What are your thoughts on the new detachment? Chicken and I were going to play, our plan for LVO, it's a teams event. I, as a Kroot enjoyer, was planning to play mostly Kroot. And Chris, Chicken, as a battlesuit enjoyer, was planning to play mostly battlesuits. But the new detachment, like, in theory, rewards you for playing a mix of both. But the event rules say that your armies count as separate armies, even if we were to both take the new detachment. Like, if I had one of my Kroot units run up, his battlesuits wouldn't benefit from the extra AP from the sub-faction rule, because we're in different armies. So I think we're sort of like, I don't know, we haven't talked about this a lot, but I think we're sort of leaning towards still just playing, like, me playing the Kroot hunting pack, and Chicken playing either Manta or Kauyan or some other, or Retaliation Cadre, some other normal Tau detachment, which is kind of a bummer because, like, I feel like the whole point of, like, we were sort of, our plan was to recreate the feel of that new detachment with the old detachments. But we're not able to do that because of the way the event rules are structured. So, but I think, I don't know, I'm not super sad. I think Kroot hunting pack plus other Tau detachment is still, like, going to be fun and good. Yeah, Soups. I think I agree. It's a lot of fussing with. I think it actually does have a lot. Well, the stratagems are, I think, amazing, and where a lot of the good stuff comes from. The army, or the detachment rule is fine. I mean, AP is great, but it also relies on your opponent not killing your Kroot things for the extra AP. It was the classic marker light problem. Like, if the way your army gets +1 to hit is with marker lights, and your opponent kills all your marker lights, then you're just back to being BS4 dudes. And it's kind of the same way. It's like, oh, we've got these ways to get extra AP, except it relies on them not killing our squishiest assets, the Kroot. So, yeah, I kind of love the idea of the Kroot hunting pack plus battle suits in Manta, for example. Because then it's like all your utility gets a 5-up invuln save. All your utility, you know, all of a sudden becomes like really, like actually useful. Like, can you imagine if you brought a mixed like Tau and Kroot list, except all of your Tau got the benefit of, you know, a battlesuit focused detachment, and all of your Kroot got the benefit of the hunting pack detachment. It's like, it feels quite strong to me. So yeah, I think it will be very fine. And we'll each get to play our like favorite bits of the army that way, which also will feel good. I was planning on, if I had time, I was planning on building a new Greater Narlock for the event as well. I don't think I'm going to have time. I think that I'm going to be down to the wire getting this thing finished. Oh, you know, I did the, I pulled the tape off with it out of focus. I love the grand reveal of the masking tape coming off. I had a little bit of spots over here where the gray paint peeled up with the tape, but it's not super bad. I think it'll be easy enough to clean up. And or hide with weathering, also a thing. That looks great. Okay. I think there's this other question when you build big models like this, like how do you get the most value from them? I thought a lot about this too. Like, I honestly think, and I think Squidmar talked about this a little bit when he built his Manta, which is that I honestly think you probably get more use out of a model like this as when you build it with the specific intention of using it as terrain, than if you build it, you know, like, I don't know that the Manta necessarily fits this description, but like, let's say there was a model where you could sort of build it in one of two configurations, like a landed deployed configuration and like a flying active fighting configuration. And you had to sort of choose at the time you built it which configuration you built it in, and you couldn't really switch between them. Like, which should you build it in? I think most people would be like, well, I definitely want to like play games with it, so I should build it in the like active flying fighting configuration. But I don't know, I think like honestly a model like this you might use once, maybe twice a year in terms of like gaming with it, but you might use it 5 or 6 times a year as a narrative terrain piece in like a terrain piece in like a narrative game. So I wonder if like there's an argument to be made that in that hypothetical situation, the right choice is to like build it as the terrain piece. I think, you know, the Manta is kind of reconfigurable in that way. You don't have to decide at the time you build it. It can kind of be set up and deployed with the tank bay, you know, that lowers and stuff like that. You can switch it between its two modes pretty easily. So I don't know that you're like forced into that decision, but Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about that. Like, I think there's a lot of value if you have to make a choice between sort of building something two different ways. Like, it's not obvious to me which is the right thing, because I think you probably get more use out of it as terrain in terms of like number of uses, I guess. Yeah. The landers are landed. Yeah. Yep. Well, I guess the Arvis lighter does have, it has like rules in the game, but they're not, are they, do you, actually, Polly, do you know what they are, like off the top of your head? What does it do? It's just a transport, right? Aquila Lander's the same way, yeah. They're just transports, right? It's like carry some dudes, drop them off, flying rhino, basically. Is that right? All right, let's mix up a little more paint. Escape to the transport. Yeah, exactly. Yep. I think, honestly, I feel like that, like airplanes in 40K are becoming that. They're like, cool, well, here's an airbase with a bunch of airplane models. You get your dudes, like the attackers are trying to get to the airplanes and plant explosives on them. And the defenders are trying to like take off and fly away with their, you could come up with like a narrative scenario like that. And maybe that's just like where we are with airplanes in 40K right now. All right, let me make sure I use the right paint. Blue, gray, pale. Yeah, okay. Helicopter assault. Yeah. Agreed. This Lazy Susan is like, I think I'm going to keep using this for painting this model even when I'm not painting on a live stream. This is actually like very, very useful. Even for just painting at home. Like you need enough space to like spin it. It's a giant model and it has a wide turning radius. It's pretty great. Okay. I'm going to try to pour this paint back into this bottle. I don't know how successful I'm going to be. I have a lot left over. Vallejo bottles are not super great for this. All right. Oh, the Arvis lighter looks, that rule sounds kind of cool. Like in a world where the aircraft rules just kind of make planes bad. Not because like the data sheet's bad, but just because it has to start off the table and blah, blah, blah. If it has a special rule that allows you to sort of circumvent that, it's kind of sweet. Did they come out with, okay, did they come out with a plastic Arvis lighter? Or am I thinking of the Legions Imperialis one? I know they came out with a plastic Legions Imperialis one. But is there a 40K scale, 28 scale, millimeter scale Arvis lighter kit in plastic? An updated resin kit. Okay. Oh, they've announced it. Okay, so it's coming soon, but it has not come out yet. Yeah, that's the 30K one, Chris. Yeah. Is there, like, functionally though, is there a difference between a 30K Arvis lighter and a 40K one? Kind of the same, right? All right. Let's take this tape off. I feel like I end up over taping, but the few times that I try to like be skimpy with my tape usage, I just end up with overspray and regretting it. Oh, okay. A ramp gunner. Got it. Okay, so the 30K one, you could build it as a 40K one by just omitting some of those extra options. Or since there aren't weapon options in 40K anymore, it kind of doesn't matter. I guess that's the real answer. Also, it's Legends, and if someone's letting you use it, they probably are fine with whatever. Oh no, I've got gray paint. I'm pulling up gray paint. You see that right there? This is not light gray paint that seeped through. This is dark gray paint that got pulled up. I must not have gotten with the wash, the scrubbing must not have gotten down in that crevice. And so there must be some oil or mold release or something down there that prevented the primer from sticking. These big flat surfaces though, they're paint sticking fine there. I also probably didn't wait long enough before using the tape. I'm sure the acrylic paint probably wanted to dry for an hour or two before being masked. Oh well. The show must go on. Okay. There we go. Cool. Let me put this together just so we get a final. So what do we do today? We took a gray thing, we made it a slightly different shade of gray, and then we made specific parts of it an even differenter shade of gray. We talked about the history of this model, how I came to have it, and how we got to this stage of the build. There's still a lot to do here. I am doing this again. I'm gonna do another journey in 2 days. not tomorrow, but the day after. And so we'll do a little bit more masking type work. I'll see if I can get some more dark gray paint in the interim. Because, yeah, that'd be nice. And I think also in the interim, I will... I completely forgot to prime the engines. So I'll work to prime these guys. And then we can... These will be fun to paint. I'm hoping maybe we can paint these on stream in 2 days, on Tuesday. We can do some engine glow. They're going to be this light blue, this light gray color also. Yeah, and then even after, I don't know if I'll do more journeys than just these 2 days. I have to go back to work after this. But I also still have all the weapons. Like, I don't know if you can see here, but like, none of the weapons are installed. The burst cannons obviously are missing, but like, there's 6 ion cannons and 2 rail cannons that need to mount in here. And my friend who has built a couple of these, he recommended that I magnetize the guns, both the ion cannons and the rail cannons, because they get bumped and then they break. So he was saying magnetize them so that they don't break off, which I thought that was a really good idea. So I'm planning on doing that. So it's fine that they're not mounted yet, but at some point I need to paint them and magnetize them. And then, yeah, all the burst cannons too. So we'll definitely have a lot of work to do, and only 2.5 weeks before LVO. So, but yeah, we'll. That's a problem for next week's Brett. In a couple of days, I'll be back, and we'll try this again, hopefully with some more dark gray paint. But even if not, I've got a couple of things, with these engines that we can do, and we can do the orange striping, and maybe some other panel modulate. Well, no, I don't want to do the panel modulation stuff until I've got the dark gray base down really good. But okay, that let me just double check chat. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Chris, you're right. The painter's tape came off. Yep. Okay, cool. Well, thanks guys for joining me. I'll be, this was what, 2.5 hours? Yeah, okay, great. I'm gonna go grab some lunch, and I'll post photos of where it's at in Discord. Like I said, I've got this this thread going with as like a build log. So I'll update that thread with pictures from the end of the stream today, and I'll see you guys in a couple of days. Thanks for hanging out with me. Bye bye.